everyone. This is Nowell with Cmon Creative, and I am so glad that you tuned in for today's spontaneous episode. So today, I want to talk about digital church and navigating the online experience at your churches online. And so I brought some friends who I think are not just only people that I enjoy talking with, but I love learning from them as well. And so we're going to have this forum today. And so with me, I have Andy Curtis. He is the worship leader down at TC3 Church in Stuart, Florida. I also have Derek Brown. He is the owner of the company BrandVoice Creative. He helps churches and businesses with their messaging and great wealth of knowledge. And then I also have Dylan Seals. And Dylan is a worship media consultant for mixing and engineering and all of that stuff. And so he kind of helps from the technical side. And I know Dylan from when we travel with Michael W. Smith. So he brings a real wealth of knowledge. And so today I wanted to have this conversation. And before we even jump into it, what I wanted to say was the reason why this came about was I was just really, I work more with businesses and entertainment professionals, and I love the church and I love nonprofits. But I've always sat back and said, man, I just think we could be doing better. I think we could be stepping up our game as far as creativity, as far as the online experience. And instead of just complaining about it, I just said, man, what if I just create something that would be a solution or a forum where people can kind of listen, they can add notes in the comments, they can just start a discussion amongst their teams. And here's what I think first. I think that with COVID-19 and everything, I think we have a great opportunity in front of us as far as the church to give people a better online experience. But here's my frustration. I was talking with a friend, and he was talking about that what he thinks God is doing is allowing the church to be reshaped. There's a difference between rebranding and being reshaped. He said what the church has been doing, we have been rebranding. For example, if you have a tree and you cut down the tree and call it timber, it's still a tree. It's not until you reshape the tree and make it a dresser or a cabinet, you haven't done much. It's still a tree, but you just called it timber. And I think that that's kind of what I've seen a lot of times in the church is that we've cut down the tree and we just called it something else and we're just rebranding it, but we haven't really reshaped it. And I think that with the digital church experience, this is like kind of reshaping the church. Like right now we can't meet. And so we're out of the four walls. And so that's the premise of this conversation, is to be able to foster a conversation. So I'm going to pass it off. I would love to hear each of you guys' little synopsis of where you think things are. And we can just dive in. There's no set agenda, but I'll just start with you, Andy, since you've been doing this a long time. So let's just start with you, go from you to Derek to Dylan.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting time. I mean, we've dived into church online for a few years now, really as a way to on-ramp people to our physical church experience. I mean, it's people could try us out online, and if you will, we customize the content, we customized the talking heads, really to meet people where they were at home. So we kind of have been doing this a while. South Florida is a real transient place. I mean, like you wake up every Sunday morning and you got the ocean, you got your boat, you got the beach. I mean, that's a real thing to compete with, and man, families work, 5-6 days a week. It's okay to take the family and spend some time on Sunday morning at the beach. That's a real thing. Quality time's important. And so being able to tune us in while you're there on a phone or an iPad, we've seen that as a real thing over the years. And so it's been a fun challenge to dial that in a way to where that is what we're hanging our hat on. Yeah. And so I was telling this earlier, we're in a unique position down here because we're a small staff. I mean, the church runs about 1,400 or so, but we're only 7 people on staff. Oh, wow. And so we can operate and move and kind of make decisions real fast and quick. And that's allowed us to adapt to the situation that we're in. And so, yeah, I mean, we're just moving forward under the, you know, with the kind of the mantra that like excellence is what we're wanting to put out. Creative excellence. That's not a gear list. You know what I mean? That's not a camera list or anything like that.
I want to say this about your church because I was introduced to you by Dylan, and Dylan had sent me a link of the mix that he helps your church with. I was literally blown away. Like, your recordings sound like a record. And I'm asking Dylan privately, I'm like, are they doing overdubs or what are they doing? Because it just sounds so amazing and it looks professional. And I'm like, when I watched it, I was like, man, should I know them? Is this elevation worship? Is this?
You should know them.
Right, yeah, I should know them. But I just thought, like, man, maybe I missed it, you know, on social media.
Where he lay, see the stone rolled away. He is risen, he's alive.
But it's just a true testament to the way that you guys output excellence. And so I wanted you to just talk about that.
No, yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's anybody can do that. Like, you know, it doesn't take a lot of talent to work hard or come in early or stay late or grind, you know? And so our team really believes in that. And so in this time, you know, we're dialing each week, like, how can we get 10% better, 10% better, 10% better? And one of those ways was partnering with HD Audio Worship and Dylan and just having him coach us remotely. I mean, I know he's going to dive in and talk a little bit about that, but you know, we set up a camera shoot. We basically set up a sound stage in our auditorium. It wasn't anything special. It's on the stage. We dropped our LED screen 5 feet. So it goes from the floor. So you get that background of us sitting on the stage. The LED screen's like totally in there. We closed our camera shots in. And then we've just had about 5 or 6 binges where we brought different versions of a band in, like what you saw at Easter was, if you've checked out, you know, TC3.live, or you can find that information on our Facebook, TC3. But like we just kind of brought a band in and recorded, you know, 2 nights with that. And then all this was really before the state of Florida got like mandated to kind of lock down. So we got in at the right time. And then we brought an acoustic version of a band in. And so we're setting on audio content just because we've worked ahead of the game. And so partnering with a guy like Dylan has allowed us to do that. And I think that's a big deal too. Like, understanding in this time what you're good at and what you can get better at. Find those people that can make you 20, 30, 40% better in technical aspects, and really striving, you know, to meet those goals. And so we've really pushed into strategic partnerships in this time. And I think that's one of the things that's allowed us to be successful.
That's awesome. And so, Derek, like, I would love for you to just kind of tell us your experience and what you think about this topic as a whole, and what's your contribution?
Yeah, so just as a communications director for a large church just south of Nashville in Franklin, I think what the sense that I'm getting just from the community of other communications directors is, on one hand, lots of excitement. We're finally able to do the things that we've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Is buying into those things, and they're seeing the values. That's great on one hand because it's spurring on all this creativity. In fact, I think the church is putting out more content than Hollywood right now, which is quite amazing.
That's crazy.
On the other hand, though, there's tons of confusion. There is, dare I say, even panic from a lot of churches who don't have the experience in the online environment, and suddenly in a matter of just a few days, they're suddenly thrust into this world, and they're trying to figure out how in the world are we going to be able to keep the lights on? Because tied to this online streaming is also many churches don't have an online giving portal. And so they have no way of getting tithes from people. And so there's just lots of just stress coming in the communications world, and it touches other worlds too, such as tech and upper leadership.
Yeah.
really everyone, to be honest, it touches to some degree. But I truly believe that what the church does during this time right now will determine the degrees of effectiveness that she has in the future.
Yeah.
I kind of liken this, yes, we're reshaping, but we're also trying to catch up with what industries have been doing for a long time now. And churches are just now starting to kind of say, well, maybe there is something to all of this digital stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for churches, I think we're seeing a shift or a navigation that is on par with the same thing that the church experienced back when the whole printing press happened.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
Bibles were, readily available. And it's like, what do we do with all of this dissemination of information?
Right.
And in the same boat here, it just looks a little bit different.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a good segue too, because one of the things that looks different is just the technology, Dylan. And I would love for you to just talk about your angle of what you do from a technical side, because here's what I believe before you share this. I believe that perception determines reception. So how people perceive you determines how they receive what you do. And I think with the audio part of what you do for the online experience, can you just kind of talk about the importance of that and what you've seen?
Sure. Well, audio is like, I think the fact that we can transmit emotions over a wire, that's incredible in its own right.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that well takes a lot of forethought. And we all remember day after the Super Bowl seeing tweets about somebody's mic wasn't on or something like that, or they weren't singing on pitch or whatever. I mean, it's just a very broadcasting audio has very tight margins. It's very hard to get. It's very easy for it to go sideways or not hear your background vocals or something like that. But more than that, it's just playing the media game. I mean, basically thinking about what you're doing as a completely new thing. Yeah.
Well, let's just say, so practically, because like I said, people, you can watch some of TC3 Church's thing. I've watched a lot of churches yesterday. Yesterday was Easter, and I mean, I probably went to 20 churches yesterday, just trying to hear and see what people were doing. And some of them I'm very impressed. So this is not going to be very helpful for, your Elevation Church or certain big churches or mega churches that have a large staff, they have a large video team. But then I've also seen some that they didn't have anything. They just had their Facebook Live. And then the thing that stood out to me yesterday, there's a church here in Nashville called Nashville Life. And one of my clients, CC Wine, and she goes there and she's one of the pastors there. And I was so blown away, but they don't have a building. They don't have a tech team like everybody else, but they took what they had and it was an amazing experience. And so they kind of used their cell phones. They did the virtual worship team choir thing. They had it mixed and sound great. They incorporated kids. They did a visual message versus just a regular preaching type of message. And I just thought it was done really well for people that don't have a lot of resources. And the thing that kind of stood out to me was just the sonic sound quality. Maybe because it's Nashville and they mixed it well. Let's just kind of talk about people that are watching. Let's talk about the sound,
Okay.
And then we'll get into the visual and social media and all that stuff. But with worship, what do you guys think, Andy, Dylan, or Derek? What do you think people that are watching churches can do around the worship? What are some creative ideas that you've done, or what's your thoughts about making the worship experience better?
Well, we have had success doing what we can do well, and committing to that. This is a time to where it's like a baseball analogy. If you got one pitch, throw the fastball. Do what you do well. And so we've had a relationship with Dylan for about 2 years. And so bringing him on to kind of coach through us, and like, I know I'm gonna let him speak to a little bit about the process of how we recorded our Easter service and how we mix it in post. I think that's a real thing that churches can do, is kind of begin to start thinking about this as all in the can. Like, we're making TV shows. It's what we're doing. I mean, and so that's a secular word. I guess it's secular thought process, but we're thinking production.
Yeah.
Not the essence of what we're doing is the gospel, guys. We know that. Like, we know that thought, but how we're making it is really cut production wise, like a TV show. I mean, we need to start thinking in segments. We need to start thinking like, worship, our message. We give our kids a segment in the Sunday morning experience. And so all that, how it all broadcasts, like, that has to technically meter correctly. Like, you don't want the kids to come on and then you got to turn the volume back up, and then, oh, here's the band, got to turn the volume back down. Those are little error things that a coach can fix for you. And so we've really partnered well with Dylan and AC Audio Worship into tweaking that, diving that in for us in a big way.
Walk us through how it works with Dylan. So Dylan, you're in Tennessee, you're in Florida. What is happening on the audio worship side? Your Easter service. How is this working, Dylan?
Well, Andy and I have been working together, like you said, for a couple of years, and typically I'd get on a plane and go hang out with him because he's got a great setup down there.
Florida.
And we're in Florida, and he's got a pool, and but I also love being with his people and being at the church. So I think one cool thing that's happened out of this whole lockdown situation is I've learned how to leverage more technology to do things here in my studio. I've worked with 5 different churches over the last 3 weeks leading up to Easter and now beyond. And I almost feel like I'm more powerful here than if I'm out, because I can pull people's streams up on the mastering speakers. I'm constantly working in this environment where I know what the critical audio sounds like. So for Easter a couple weeks ago, we were going to record, what was it? How many songs did we record over 2 days, Andy?
It was probably close to 12 to 10 to 12 like songs in two different sets, 2 different days, 2 different stage layouts.
And so the first day I worked with their on-staff engineer, Jeremy, and we made a game plan for like input list and how the microphones were going to be laid out. And I was able to get on Zoom and actually see and control his tracking computer, and we recorded to a shared hard drive. And then we had another call with their intern who was like my A2. So he was on FaceTime, and I was showing him like, okay, move that microphone here. Okay, go over to this drum. And I found like the hi-hat microphone was upside down, stuff like that. So, but like I felt
honest mistake.
Honest mistake. But I felt so confident in what I was hearing, and he was mixing me a private stream with the click track, and I was able to talk back through Zoom. It was a fantastic experience, and I wouldn't have been able to listen so critically if I had even been there.
Right.
And so it was almost like I was down the hall from the stage here, which that blows my mind. And then we spent the next week cranking out mixes. And again, like our typical live recordings that we do, we would overdub maybe some background vocals or whatever. We just went with what we had, and it worked out great.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say this because, also being a worship leader, I think people don't realize the power that they have with their worship experience. I always say this, a lot of times in church, your engines that fuel the church are worship and the word. And so those are the 2 big components. But a lot of times people just say, oh, we're just going to sing. And I'm like, guys, if you have an opportunity to be better, like some of the things that I saw over the online was, I don't think some people don't know how to mix for their mobile devices. Some people mix where it's like, man, if you put on your surround sound, it sounds great. But I'm like, well, most people are not going to have surround sound.
Right.
They got to use their mobile device. And so I've watched some churches where you can't hear the background vocals, or you hear the lead, and it's elevated way more than the other vocals, and you got 5 or 6 people on the stage singing and you don't even hear them. And I think that that's one of the things that can be frustrating for churches, just in trying to produce this. Now I have to, Derek, you can jump in on this. The reality of it is I can sit on here and just talk about churches and what they have and what they don't have. And like I said, some churches have the bandwidth or the staff or the finances to be able to do it. But Derek, talk about what are the smaller churches, what are their frustrations, and maybe you can lead us in that, and then maybe we can try to give solutions to those smaller churches that don't have what we may have.
Yeah, the sense that I get is that the main frustration with smaller churches is they're trying to emulate what the bigger churches are doing.
Yeah.
They don't have the resources. They may not even have the prowess, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of neither here nor there, but they may not have the prowess to pull that off. And so it ends up coming across as very inauthentic. It comes across as unrelatable. And so really what this highlights, and let's see, I think it was you, Calvin, we're getting into this. What this highlights more than anything is understanding who your audience is. Yeah. And to tailor the message for the medium, right? We hear that all the time in marketing world, the message for the medium. But it's like what you were saying with mobile devices, for example. We need to go in and see that, okay, I know for a fact with our website and our socials that over 80% of people are viewing those on mobile devices. So our audio engineer mixed our whole Sunday morning experience for mobile devices, knowing that that's primarily how people are going to be engaging with that. That's one thing. That's understanding your audience. But people at this time, more than any other, I think they want to see something authentic, and they want to see something that they can relate to. And I think that it should be said that the small churches that are out there with the shaky cameras and the bad audio and all of this stuff, like, they are doing the best that they can do. And I feel like we need to acknowledge the fact that they are trying to do everything that they can. It's really a beautiful thing in the sense of trying to adopt to this new environment, even if it's not to the scale of the Elevations of the world. And it should, right? Yeah. They are Elevation. Elevation has a very specific audience that they're geared toward, and they've been doing this for a long, long time. So the small churches, I'm sure you guys are going to kind of get into the weeds on what you can do, but I think just even very small things can make a huge difference. But we've got to start from the foundation of knowing who our people are and trying to be as relatable and as authentic as we can in this space.
Hey, Derek, I think, like, if I can ask you a question, you're a communications guy. This is great. I think what a lot of churches are going to iron out in this time is really, really great. And that's kind of the tree analogy that Calvin was mentioning earlier. And so, like, I get a sense that there's always been a little bit of like, hey, we're the creatives. Hey, we're the lead team. And there's always this kind of push and pull thing. I was watching on TV the other night. Remember that old early 80s movie, Airplane, with Leslie Nielsen in it? And like, right at the end when they're about to kind of land that scary movie, he always comes in and he's like, I just want you to know, good luck. We're all counting on you. And he shuts the door, and then 30 seconds later he comes back in. I just want you to know, good luck. And we're all counting. And it just, the slapstick of the comedies, it's over and over again. I think in a lot of places, there's been this, like, not a lot of communication and synergy between creative teams and the lead teams. And we have some, senior pastor, executive pastor types going into the creative room, open up the door and just, good luck. We're all counting on you. And then shutting the door. Like, there's not a lot of, but this is a great time for churches to get on the same page. And, what they think they're putting out on a Sunday morning when the walls are there versus what we can, like, this is a great tangible measurement, right? Like, we can rewind. It's like, I played, football in college. You could, they'd rewind that tape and they would just be like, this isn't the best that you can do. I know it. Yeah. And why is that? And you can rewind that, be honest with yourself. Hey, let's get better. It's a great time for executive teams to get on the same page, or creative teams to get on the same page. And we're operating in synergy. Do you see that some as a communications guy in this time as being like an important thing that can happen through all this?
Yeah, Andy, that's a great point. I think if you think about the way most churches are structured organizationally speaking, and I'll just speak from communications, but the same thing could be said about tech or creatives, depending on how the organization is structured. But at least from the communications perspective, for so long, and I see it across a lot of churches that I work with, communications is just one of the ministries that they have, right? So it's like, we have a men's ministry, and we have a women's ministry, and communications ministry, and we have on and on and on. Well, now what's happened with this new environment, we can no longer meet physically. Communications and tech has suddenly gone from just kind of one of the ministries to the central hub, which is actually a great thing. And that's not me saying that pridefully as a communications guy. It's a great thing in the sense that it ensures that all the ministries that are communicating through a consistent and singular voice to their people, versus it just act on ministry, if you will. So exactly what you're saying, that is what has happened. You know, we've got leaders coming and going, hey, guys, we want you to figure out how to make this the best possible way that you can. Do the best thing that you can do. And like you were saying, improve incrementally over the week. So yeah.
That's what it's about.
I wanted to say this point because I think it's important to say this. Like I've seen churches all years ago, pastors, they get online and they get to church and they talk about social media, how is this, and y'all need to stay out of social media, blah, 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 blah. And right now, it's like their champion. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, we kind of need to go to social media. And one of the things that I wanted to say was, I follow a marketer named Gary Vee, and I'm sure you guys are all familiar with him. But a lot of people in the church may not, because of just this approach. But this is really important. I remember a couple years ago, he was talking about something about Toys R Us. He said, look, Toys R Us was the main toy company, and they were the number one for years. We all grew up around Toys R Us. Toys R Us really didn't believe in the internet. And what happened was when Amazon came around, they outsourced. Like, oh, we don't really do internet. We'll just outsource our shipping through Amazon. Well, because Toys R Us didn't innovate, they went out of business. And so my point is that it's either you start to innovate or die, because I believe technology is here and it's here to stay. And like you said, Andy, we have to look at ourselves as a media company. Don't get so deep and spiritual. Like, I'm not a media company, I'm the church. We get that, everybody that's watching. We understand. We love the Lord. But practically, you have to start approaching this different, because here's the deal. The playing field is leveled right now. We have the same devices that Ellen, Oprah, Jimmy Fallon, they're all doing their same show from their phone and computer, the same way that we're talking right now. And I thought about that over the last few weeks. Like, this is a good opportunity for us to up our game. But here's the deal. There's so much noise online. Everybody's live. I think the only thing that helps you to get seen or noticed or grab people's attention is having something of quality, of value. I did a little poll over the weekend, and I asked people, I said, how many of you attend other churches on Sunday besides your own? And over 80% said we go to other churches. Yeah. Well, here's the deal. I love you and I love this church, but I'm also going to go over to Elevation. And if your worship don't sound too great, I'm going to come back when the pastor's ready. And then I'll listen to you. But here's the deal. You're going to everybody's talking about our numbers have increased. Your numbers might have increased because people that don't go to your church are watching. And then I'm just wondering, will people stick and stay at the same church if other people are providing a better online experience? That when we can get back in the building, will we want to go somewhere else? And I'm not trying to promote competition. Right. What I am trying to get people to understand is you got to step up, like innovate, or you kind of get left. What's your thoughts on that? Anybody want to? It's free for all.
Oh, I agree. I 100% agree. And I think it's from the standpoint too of just like taking pride and putting out the best that you can do. I think like Derek was crushing this thought earlier when he was saying like, you may want to be Hillsong, but like your church wants you.
Yeah.
Like you've always been good enough for your church. You always been good enough. We're still ministering to the neighborhood. We might broadcast this ability to go everywhere, right? But we're still ministering to our neighborhoods. And so, no, I 100% agree. It's just, you put out your best, you work hard to get your best. Something we did at Easter to that thought of just like people like might stumble upon TC3 and be like, oh, wow, this isn't Stuart. Well, we were in the weeds, probably 8 segments done. And Dylan shot me a message that was like, dude, you need to get a drone up in the air and show a cut of your building, because you might have people like seeing this and, oh, I kind of know where TC3 is, but they definitely, oh, I know that bill. I know where that's at. And so that's a little small thing that was kind of like brought to my attention that took us 30 minutes to go out, get a drone up in the air, do some flybys of it, throw that into Premiere and cut little segments of it jumping around. Yeah, and that was thrown right into our opener. And so like, no, I think like people taking pride in the product is the biggest thing. So many churches have been able to just go on the same planning center format on repeat, and we're guilty of that too, man. I don't care how big of a church. One of my closest friends is one of the, creative engines at Elevation in their video world. And, he's always guarded against that rut. And so I think this is a great time to do things that you've never done before. We started doing a pre-show, Calvin, like we didn't know. All I knew is this. I didn't want people to tune on at 9, because if they jump in at 9, like 9:10 is when they're really getting in, and they've missed the first song. People are just late to their living rooms. I mean, it's just the people are just crazy. And so we started this in a negative space segment at like 8:40, in 20 minutes, where we're just on laughing and joking and running little comedic segments and just giving church announcements and trying to promote those like and shares. And Derek, you can speak to the Facebook analytics too. Like, man, if people are clicking on your page and liking and sharing and commenting and throwing those smiley faces in there, you kind of crack the algorithm a little bit. You get rewarded, and so like it's a neat thing. And we were finding that like we were ramping up hundreds of people prior to church actually starting. Yeah. And so that was something that was like simple for us. Like we didn't know what we were doing, but now 5 weeks into it now, it's better than it was week 1, Right. So not being afraid to try those little things that can push you percentages better, I think are really important. Freedom to fail is a big deal on this, and just getting better. Put out the beta, work the 2.0, work the 3.0, work the 4.0, and just pushing for better is a big deal.
Yeah. There's so much there. That's good stuff, Andy. I don't want to monopolize the time by any means, but I think the important thing for small churches, medium-sized and large churches to understand is that the front door to their church is their website and their socials, and that's not going away. Like, so the sooner we accept that that's not going away, we can start doing something about it.
Right.
Website, we have seen 250% year-over-year increase in website during the weeks of the coronavirus quarantine versus last year. 300% more live viewers on a Sunday morning. It's crazy the amount of audience that is tuning in, and that's not an uncommon stat. I've heard it from lots of other churches. Yeah. But we're talking about ways that like smaller churches can do some things that would really help them. One of the things, with the website being the front door to their church, there's 3 things, and these don't quite apply during quarantine, but I want people to understand these things for whenever the quarantine is lifted and we're starting to gather back together. The 3 things that people are looking for when they visit a church website, I hear it all the time. What time does it start? Where are you located? And what do I wear? Those are the 3 things that are the biggest hangups for people. I'm going to show up late. I might dress too nice and they're in, board shorts and flip flops, or maybe the vice versa kind of deal. And so it's like, if you don't have that on your website when this quarantine is lifted, go to your website, like quit listening to this and go to your website and put that on your website, because that's what we're looking at. And that's the front door to it. But yeah, the socials and the website.
Well, I wanted to take another little turn, and let's just talk about the messages. Like, I can speak freely. I think it's hard for sometimes, and I'm just being honest, when I was on staff at a church before years ago, it's hard for maybe the worship pastor to tell the pastor suggestions on how they can do their message. So I wanted to talk about the messages, because I think, one, I don't want to watch online an hour message. Like my attention span just doesn't want to do it. I saw some people yesterday, they did some creative things with the message. It didn't have to be that the pastor was sitting at the pulpit, on Sunday morning preaching. They used different visual elements to kind of craft a story. And it was actually very entertaining. And I watched it, and I was like, man, I think I was just watching it because I saw, some good stock footage of video. And then I think your pastor, Andy, if I'm correct, didn't he do his message in his car?
Yeah, he started in a graveyard to just reflect on the Good Friday. It was 3 locations, 22 minutes, one take, and we stopped by the church, and then did a loop around an empty church, and then ended up at a dock looking over the intercoastal. Yeah. And the most of it was shot like docu style, straight up. I was in the passenger seat shooting him, with a 24, and it was like, it was conversational. He caught himself stumbling on a couple of words and got back. It wasn't buttoned up, but it was real.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
I was going to say this real quick. I love that because our pastor, where I go to church with Derek, every morning he does this 7 a.m. Promise Not Panic. And from every day since COVID-19, he's been doing this. And literally, I'll see sometimes it's 600 to 700 people online at 7 a.m. watching him in his kitchen in a sweatshirt, talking and sharing the word. And they're engaged the whole time. And then sometimes I'll go on Sunday morning and I'm like, wait a minute, there's only 300 people watching. There's a bigger number. And I'm saying all that to say that I think the listeners, the watchers, love the personal kind of touch. And so for a pastor to try his message, like I've seen people do their Good Friday service out in the fields. I've seen people do things, like you said, in their car. And I just think that is a really creative way to kind of keep my attention and allow me to get the word in a different way versus me having it a certain way. Did you have something you want to say, Dylan?
Well, yeah, I think what works right now is to be completely, the word authentic gets thrown around a lot, but creating something new, creating something. Andy and I talked a couple weeks ago about how the church has always invited the congregation into the doors to meet. Now the church is inviting the church into their home. And I think when you create a new experience, something that's completely not just being up on stage, like pretending everything's okay. Right. I see massive churches, 20,000 member churches doing what I feel is pantomime. It's unbelievable to me. Creating a whole new experience right now is the most authentic thing I think that we can do. And I want to speak some more to just having that media mindset. It's not glorification. It's not trying to be a rock star to get the lighting right and the picture right and the sound right. Excellence in that medium. It's no one's going to watch what we did for Easter yesterday and say, that sounds great, or that looks awesome. Maybe a couple people, but what we want to happen is for them to just be drawn into the experience, to be drawn in on a 5-inch screen and some earbuds and worship and have that thing wash over them. And what we, when we remove the distractions, that's when that happens. And there's a lot of psychology in what we do, but I think a good message for leadership would be that it's not about a rock and roll show or we're really trying all these things we've talked about, like Andy's pre-show segment. These are things that media figured out 50 years ago. Yeah. You don't start your football show with a card that says we're going to start the football game in 5 minutes. Come back. NBC doesn't put that up. You have an engaging pre-show. So I think it goes a long way to look at what has worked in media for the last half century, and go ahead and just use those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hey, Calvin, well, I mean, a great example of something that's practical with us is like, man, when you're shooting in somebody's car, you have it's 92 outside. The air conditioner was on. We were shooting outside. We were at the dock. The wind was blowing. And the only mic that we had was like this, industry standard to lower than industry standard, lav, probably lower to industry standard. And then that's why you work with a guy that can help you like Dylan, because what he said was the video side of things, we felt confident that we could make engaging. But man, if the minute that scene opened up and you were just hearing shh from all the external noise, man, you're going to put up with that for a little bit. But like you said from the very start, you don't have to listen to that because there's something next, So we, that's where like working with professionals, like Dylan at HC Audio Worship, when we sent him just that raw file, and what we got back was all of that stuff sucked out of there. And it was just the right here of our pastor's voice. And he was like between your eyes talking to you that whole segment. Yeah. And he was also in your grill because we shot it in his car. Yeah. And so those things working together, really were the secret sauce in making that a really connective piece. Yeah. And so those things matter.
And here's what I would say too, because I want to kind of get near the end of this, but I believe that we can create an environment for maximum impact. I believe that we should be creating an environment where a lot of things can happen for a lot of people. You got young, old, all different diversities. Like you're producing something where everything can happen for everybody. And I say that because one of the questions that I asked people over the weekend, I said, does a specific pastor or specific worship leader affect your ability to watch? And over 70% said it does. In other words, I might not tune in if my pastor is not preaching. So I just want to let pastors know that if the people don't have a dynamic personality, if the people don't sing the best, and I'm not trying to say that we don't want to give everybody a chance. I'm just saying, it's like when you watch American Idol. Have you ever watched American Idol where it just sounded horrible and everybody that's watching it is like, this is horrible. But online, the judges was like, man, that was amazing. I'm like, I guess I had to be there because I don't see it all. And so sometimes online, not the best singer. I'm just saying you want to put your best foot forward. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that other people can't be involved. Derek, what do you think about that statement? And you can push back, or whoever can say, I agree or disagree. But I think there's something to be said about, how do you focus and produce the service, the online service, with the right kind of people?
Yeah, like I said, when we first jumped on the call, like never before has the church been creating the amount of content that it's creating right now. Mm-hmm. The double-edged sword of that is never has the church been exposed to so much noise as the church is right now.
Wow.
Before
Yeah, that's true.
before the whole thing happened, the average American was exposed to 10,000 commercial messages per day. I can only imagine what that is, right? So what you're saying, Calvin, I completely agree with. We've got to put our best foot forward in this kind of environment. That's not downplaying others' gifts and trying to, put them in the shadows, but it is recognizing that we've got this mountain of noise that we need to, to break through. It's it's been said so many times that content is king. Well, I say that attention is queen, and should run the household, because you can create all the great content that you want, but if you don't stop the scroll, it doesn't really matter in terms of it reaching an audience. It's not to say it doesn't matter, because people can watch things on replay and all of that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about maximizing our message on a given Sunday, it's realizing that engagement is queen, and she's going to rule the roost, so to speak.
Yeah,
that's it.
Totally. Well, I want to just first of all thank you guys for for being a part of this. I know that with stuff like this, there's no way. I mean, we can go on and on. It could be a full day conference when you start talking about the church and different things that they can do. I think what I wanted to be able to do was just to create a conversation, to just tell people that are watching and listening, to just say, hey, there's plenty of ways that you can be creative and step up your game as far as your online experience. And for those that are watching, if you want to get in touch with all of us, our information is on the screen. You got Andy. Where can they best reach you, Andy, on social media?
Email me. It's Andy Curtis, Curtis, Andy Curtis at TC3 Church. Love to chat.
Yeah, and then Derek.
Yeah, you can just email Derek at gracechapel.net is totally fine.
Yep, and then Dylan.
You can go to hdAudioWorship.com or email me at dylanseals, DYLANSEALS, at gmail.com.
Awesome. And mine is info@cmon.agency. You can reach me there. But I want to thank you guys for doing this. Like I said, I love what you guys do. And these are some people that are inspiring me to do what I do. And so I just wanted to share this with everybody. I just thank you guys for your time. And I can't wait to get out of this COVID and we can.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys. Well, thank you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Calvin. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.